Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening. ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, go ahead and download us, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to think that you are a hater. This is the day of the week where we do our interviews. It's really not even interviews now. We just bring somebody else in to hang out with us. And today, I got my good friend on to hang out with us, talk a little bit about football. He's going to be doing highly questionable next week, sitting in with Dan and Poppy. His name is Michael Smith. Mike, what's going on, man?
As I live and breathe.
Yeah,
what's going on, man?
I'd say, I'm like, where he at? I'm like, nah, we gonna bring him out. We gonna get him up above ground, sit here and hang out with us for a little bit.
Yeah, man, doing your show next week, your old show.
Yeah, man, I'd say, I can't say it's mine, but that is my chair.
Exactly, that's exactly right. It will always be your chair, so I'll try my best to do you justice.
That's right. My booty mark's still in that bad boy. Whatever booty marks I'm capable of leaving in a chair, it is still there, man. But hey, let me ask you this. This is a general question before we get into this, because I wondered this a lot of times with people. Like, you are a guy who used to cover the NFL, like every day cover the NFL. Mm-hmm. You still love it?
It's a good question. You know what I love? I love that my son loves it. As a dad, I got 3 kids. We were just talking about it off air, 12, 10, and 6. My son is the middle child, and he's really that light's starting to go on for him where he loves it. He loves talking about it. He's obsessed with playing Madden all the time. Basically he's me when I was his age. And so I love it because I'm raising a fan of sports and football in particular. But for me, man, I left the fan behind years ago. And it's funny, this summer, as I've kind of taken some time off from, the day-to-day grind, I realized, man, that I don't know what happened to that fan and if he'll ever be back, because it became my job. And so I loved, discussing it. I love, some of the passion points, if you will. And I still enjoy watching good stories unfold and watching, these athletes perform. But do I love it? Like, am I like deep into it like I used to be? I can't say that I am. It became more of my career than something, that I love just for the sake of the game itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that all of us, or at least a lot of us, not all, there's certain measures of like conflicts of conscience that come in. Like, we look at the game in a way differently than we did before as we have additional information. But I still find it to be just kind of fascinating, right? Like, the machine of all of this and how everything happens, I still find to be interesting, if nothing else. And,
right.
Like my more nerd-like inclinations can jump into that.
Well,
more so than just straight fan.
You're into the process.
Yeah, I'm into the process, and I like the game, too. But I grew up rooting for the Falcons, man. That beat the fun out of you. You grew up rooting for the Saints. They got a Super Bowl, but, man, it's hard to stay a fan when you root for losers.
But they didn't get a Super Bowl until I stopped being a fan.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, I see how it got beat at you, man.
As a matter of fact, it was because of the Falcons. Michael Haynes, dog.
Oh, that's right.
Michael Haynes. And then they went and gave him all that money after he burned them, and he didn't do nothing for the Saints. No, trust me, the playoff disappointments, I experienced all of those. This Falcon stuff, I'm like, that ain't nothing new. Yep. Like, I lived that. So that's what got me out of being a Saints fan. Then I jumped to the Cowboys for a hot second. But honestly, that was kind of lame. I know, looking back. but honestly, it really, nowadays, and you know this because even though people perceive you as young, both you and I about the same age, they perceive you as young. You're an old soul and you've been around for a while. Like, it wasn't always hip to be a fan, so openly a fan in the media.
No.
Once upon a time, we had to be objective and neutral and unbiased. And so when I got into the business in my early 20s, I didn't want to come in, looking like Joe Fan, looking like I was just excited to be in the press box and overwhelmed with joy and glee to be talking to these professional athletes that I had just finished literally rooting for in college.
Right.
So I had to kind of shut that mechanism off in my brain. And so ever since then, I kind of trained myself just to look at the story. But going back to the process thing for a second, and I know this is where I lose you, but that's why I was always so obsessed with the draft.
Yes.
The process of team constructions was always a thing that I really enjoyed and really intrigued me.
Like, I think the draft, I find the draft to be interesting. I see kind of how people get into it. My thing was, it don't matter if I'm right on the front end. Like, that was my whole thing, is that people are like, whatever I thought on the front end, they're going to show me on the back end. I'm willing to wait.
Exactly.
That was my thing. Now, let's talk about actual football that's going on here. Now, I am here in New York City. You are in the periphery of New York City.
I'm in the general vicinity.
Yo.
That's one of Bristol's calling cards. We're 2 hours away from New York.
Yes, yeah. If I say y'all ain't that far away, But, Sam Darnold Monday night looked good. Yeah. If nothing else, we could say that Sam Darnold looked good. And something's going on here that I actually can't wait to have happen in this city is, what if the Jets are good, right? Like I work in an office with Mike Greenberg. I don't see him as much now because our taping time changed, but I'm just imagining all the happiness of the Jets fans who have never experienced happiness before. Of course, it comes crashing down.
I was about to say, because if the Jets are good, all that means is that their eventual punking at the hands of the Patriots is going to be that much more painful.
Yes.
That's really what it comes down to, because it wasn't that long ago when, they kind of owned the town a little bit. They owned the back pages when Rex Ryan was doing this thing. They had their time, when they were going to the AFC title game, with Mark Sanchez. I mean, look, they've been here before with a young quarterback who they thought was good. It wasn't that long ago. And I'm not suggesting that Sam Darnold is ever going to butt fumble in the near future, but there's a certain electricity and a certain energy and a certain, enthusiasm that's just, for lack of a better phrase, real cute about Jets fans when they get excited about their team.
But I think this is a different one, though, because, so for one, I think that Darnold is a different caliber of talent than Sanchez. And the thing is, if you go back and look at Sanchez's number, his rookie year, they don't look different than Geno Smith's numbers his rookie year. Like, they were basically the same guy. Sanchez has had a lot more around him, including, like, having a better defense. And that kind of takes me to where this thing with Darnold is interesting, because he had that awful pass to start the game, but then he looked pretty good for the rest of the way. But the thing that's lost in this is the rest of the Jets, I think they looked pretty good. The Lions may have just looked really bad, but this wasn't just like, oh my God, it's only about Sam Darnold. Right. They look to be top to bottom better.
No, they do look like they have some interesting talent around them, especially on offense. And that was with Jermaine Kearse being out. So on offense, they got some guys that can run the rock behind him. And they got some guys that can catch the ball. And Noon was a great guy to get back. I mean, because he had a nice season a couple of years ago before he hurt his neck. So, and we'll talk about Josh Allen, the Peterman and Josh Allen later on, I'm sure. But just as an example, like, forget about what the guy has or doesn't have inherently. Like, he's savvy, he's mature beyond his years, he's smart, this, that, and the other, he's got the arm talent. Forget about that. It almost always comes down to who and what's around him. And so Sam Darnold certainly didn't go to an awful situation for somebody growing up as a quarterback, like you talked about with Sanchez. Sanchez was handed off to Thomas Jones behind the offensive line with 4 first rounders, I believe, or 4 Pro Bowlers, whatever it was at the time, with a really good defense. And so if Sam Darnold can, throw it short to Quincy Enunwa and hand off to Isaiah Crowell all day, that bodes that much better for him to not get beat up early on the way these Buffalo kids about to get.
We'll get to that.
Sure.
We'll get to that situation here. Now, the thing that, to me, when I look at Darnold, is I want people to calm down just a little bit about him, because if there's anything I feel like we've learned about quarterbacks making the transition from college to the pros, if you turn the ball over a lot in college, you're probably going to turn the ball over a lot in the NFL. And Darnold turned the ball over a lot in college. A lot. Like, he is, and I don't mean this in a bad way in this case, but he looks the part. Like, he absolutely looks the part, and he's athletic, and that arm is strong. Like, you got all of those things there, man. But this evolution as it comes to quarterbacks generally, like, we go look at what's going on with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott didn't get worse. Things changed, right? The things around happened to change. And so we can do
Maybe
this.
It wasn't as good as we thought.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, with rookie quarterbacks, we can get really caught up early because we assume that the progress is just going to be linear. Like, this is something I think people need to keep in mind with Deshaun Watson, even if he weren't coming off the injury, that the improvement is not just necessarily, I was this good in year 1, I'm going to be this good in year 2. It's an up-down sort of thing. Like, with a running back, you can do that. But with a rookie quarterback, I hope for Darnold's sake that people calm it down just a little bit, because I feel like they're setting standards that are unfair, especially given that the dude just came off a game where he threw for fewer than 200 yards.
Well, calm down on both ways. And I'm glad you said that. And we're speaking in general now when it comes to quarterback maturation, because, obviously the Lions, they're on the opposite end of the spectrum. The Jets got a Hall of Famer. The Lions need to fire their coach. So that game, I don't know how much in general you can take from that one game, across the board on both sides. But to your point about, guys turning it over, when you said that, generally that's true. Matt Ryan comes to mind a little bit, as somebody, I think he threw like 19 picks his last year at Boston College, and he was a senior. And he's not been a turnover machine. Sorry, I know there have been some inopportune turnovers, especially in the red zone, but I wouldn't say that he's been marred or had a problem with turnovers throughout his career. Inopportune ones, sure, but he had not been a turnover machine. So I do think you can get smarter, you can protect the ball better, especially when it comes to fumbles. You can certainly protect the ball better in terms of fumbles, and your decision making can improve. But there are certain things, you're right, that a quarterback is just going to always be. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, Darnold might have one of those great rookie years where he throws, 20 touchdowns and 10 picks, and next year he could seem like he regresses, but to your point, that's just part of the process. It's not necessarily regression. It's just the growth process is not linear.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes, a few detours along the way.
And we see that with college guys too, right? Like Sam Darnold, for example.
Oh my God.
Where what we saw from his freshman year, then what happened with his sophomore year. Jameis Winston would be another good example of a guy where that next year looked a little bit different. Like the way this goes is just not as simple as people want it to be. But man, he got a team that's thirsty to make it happen.
They traded up to get him for that very reason. They're thirsty to make it happen. The city and the fan base is thirsty to make it happen. I think he's going to be good. Is he so good? What tickles me, I didn't hear anybody suggesting that the Giants messed up by taking Saquon Barkley over Sam Darnold. Taking the running back instead of the heir apparent to Eli Manning. Now, all of a sudden, I'm seeing, and I don't know if it's just for, for clicks or for attention or just, because that's what we do is we debate whatever topics we can manufacture. It's like, come on now. So now all of a sudden, after one game, the Giants messed up by not taking Sam Darnold and instead taking a guy that, has the potential to be a Hall of Fame caliber running back. Oh, I think that's a little ridiculous.
Oh, I will tell you though, I have been doing this from the jump.
You thought they should have got a quarterback? Well, I'll give you credit for that. Okay, cool.
A quarterback.
As long as you were there at the beginning, as long as you were there throughout the whole draft process saying the Giants need to go quarterback, I can respect that. But not after week one.
Yeah, no. I was there from the beginning on you guys need to get a quarterback because I think that the Giants saying, no, everything that's happened in the last few years related to Eli Manning and him not playing well was actually not Eli Manning's fault is absurd.
Yeah, exactly.
And even if you did feel that way, Eli Manning is in year 15.
Right.
Yo, man, you got to go get a quarterback. Like, there's no way around that. And they went into a draft with a zillion quarterbacks, and they didn't take one. And it was simply because they still think they have a franchise quarterback in a dude that I would argue was never a franchise quarterback. Now, if you were to point it to Darnold, because I wasn't sold on Darnold coming out, so I'm not going to be like, I thought they should have taken Sam Darnold. But I do think that what the Jets got was their Eli Manning, not in terms of how they play or skill, but in terms of demeanor.
Absolutely.
Right. In terms
for New York type guy.
Right.
Yeah.
The guy whose face never moves.
Yep.
And so when everything's going crazy or whatever it is, I feel like that'll be a good thing about having Sam Darnold. And I just think, yes, they could get a Hall of Fame caliber running back in Barkley. Like that's the way that this could ultimately end. But see, I didn't feel like as good as Barkley was at Penn State, I didn't feel like he was as good as Adrian Peterson was in college. I didn't feel like he was as good as Todd Gurley was in college. So I did not think he was a guy that you take number 2.
Right.
And when are the Giants going to get this quarterback? Because if they mess around and go 6-10, 5-11 this year, it's going to be go find a quarterback. And who's the quarterback they're going to go find?
Well, so go back to number 2 for a second. And look, few people were as good as Adrian Peterson, and Todd Gurley was damn good at Georgia. So, but go back to number 2. So you're thinking they should have taken, if not Darnold, and Mayfield was obviously gone, you think they should have taken either Allen, Rosen, I mean, not Lamar Jackson that high probably, but you think it should have been Allen or Rosen, if not Darnold at 2? Or are you just saying that draft should have produced a quarterback?
If you were to ask me what quarterback going in should have been taken as probably, not even necessarily as the number 1 pick, right? But the first quarterback to take, I thought it was Josh Rosen.
Okay.
I thought that was the dude they should have taken. Now, I do not think that they should have been so thirsty that they went out there at the number 2 pick and took Josh Allen. Right?
Gotcha.
I don't believe
and
that.
And Rosen seemed like he'd have fit the bill in New York. I know there was some buzz about him there. See, my thing is this, like, all things being equal, you take the quarterback. But what if in their evaluation, forget, Eli Manning's age and declining skill set, but what if in their evaluation, and this is how I feel about it, if you just stacking them side by side, Darnold versus Barkley as a player, it's not that close.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
The position is at a premium, don't get me wrong. But I'll just take Saquon Barkley for whatever quarterback I eventually get to hand off to.
Right.
Because that guy's that good.
But I think their rationale was we have a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have a quarterback.
And even if you do, not for long.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think that taking Saquon Barkley was a win now move for a team that ain't ready to win right now.
Right.
Like that to me was what it came down to, because I think that Barkley can be really good. I think he's a physical marvel.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
Yeah.
But it's their affection for Eli Manning that I find to be confusing.
No, I agree with that, but I also think at the number 2 spot, you do have to take the best player.
Or trade down.
Yeah.
Right? Like you've got the option to trade down. Because look, if you put Baker Mayfield side by side with Saquon Barkley, I think Saquon Barkley would probably seem to be the better player.
Yeah.
But they needed a quarterback, right?
Like the Browns could have taken Saquon Barkley. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And look, the Giants have been trying to go get a guy they hoped might be the next dude, right? With these, getting Davis Webb in the second round, for example, they've made some moves and kind of halfway trying to do it. I just look at them like, you won those 2 Super Bowls with Eli Manning. Quit while you're ahead, man. Take that for the good fortune that it was.
No, because it's funny. I'm bringing it back to just my summer, my epic summer. I've been telling people, like, you know what? Take vacation or take time off when you're not forced to. Take vacation, when you're not unemployed and you're between jobs. Like, take it when it's inconvenient for everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Likewise, get a quarterback before you got to.
Yes.
Like, don't get a quarterback. Be like, we need a quarterback,
right?
Because now you're reaching. Now you're reaching for Josh Allen's in that sort of thing. Whereas, you take one and you get a chance to do it the right way. Let the next Eli Manning learn behind Eli Manning, to your point about Darnold.
Well, quietly, I think the Browns did this right in the way they did it with Baker Mayfield.
Love it.
Right.
And ironically, they're doing it with the quarterback that Buffalo should still have.
Yes. That's what I was about to say. The thing that is interesting about this, because with Mayfield, we're going to see how it goes with Mayfield, but there is a significant amount of history to indicate that a player his size, it is difficult for that player to be successful as an NFL quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. He's not Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson is a next level athlete. Baker Mayfield is athletic for a quarterback, but Russell Wilson is something else. Now, Drew Brees is a different case, right? Like, Drew Brees is the one that's probably most comparable, especially if you're optimistic with Baker Mayfield.
Well, you saw what he said, talking about optimistic.
Yeah,
he said,
we saw what he said, but we also remember it took 3 years for Drew Brees to get it right. They drafted Phillip Rivers. The best. I'm
sorry, traded for Phillip Rivers. They drafted Eli.
Right.
You know how that went.
But the best line to remember about this is Drew Brees once won comeback player of the year without being injured. Like that's what it took in order for him to get there.
There are 2 ways to get comeback player of the year. You can either be injured or really bad.
Right. He was come back from what? Purdue? There was no place for the comeback to come from. Right. But I thought the Browns winning. Look, there is a ceiling on Tyrod Taylor, and I think that we all know that, and I think that's fair to say, but I also think that this is a dude that's pretty good, right? Like, the year that Kirk Cousins had his quote-unquote breakout was 2015. He didn't make the Pro Bowl that year. Tyrod Taylor did make the Pro Bowl that year. Mm-hmm. And then Buffalo decided to run him out. No, I think Cleveland was like, look, we got all these picks. We can afford to spare one.
Yep.
We'll trade that out of there. We'll get this dude, and then we don't have to put our guy out there until we feel good that he's ready or that the team is good enough around him. All of those things. Meanwhile, in Buffalo, they came back out here with Peterman again, and he looked like the Peterman had looked before, and now they're going to throw Josh Allen out there behind that terrible offensive line, and I don't blame them because I don't know what other option they had.
Yeah, they made this bed and they got to sleep in it at this point. And it's really, this is how it starts though. Honestly, this is how it starts. And real quick, just going back to Cleveland, I think Cleveland also felt like we've passed on enough franchise quarterbacks. We got to get one this year. One way or the other, we getting one.
Yes.
We are not making the Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson mistake again. Back to Buffalo though. See, this is how it starts though, man. Because look, now maybe Josh Allen, maybe he's got something to him that we just haven't seen yet and he shocks us this week and beyond. Maybe he shows enough this week to say, okay, he's not going to get destroyed by this situation. But this is the one thing I do have a problem with the draft as a concept. I love the process, but the downside of it is these kids are literally at the mercy. Forget the financial, implications of it all, or just the labor implications of it all. I'm talking about strictly from how your career plays out is really often determined on one, somebody's opinion of you as a college player vis-a-vis where they select you and who selects you in the draft. 2, their competence and their ability to surround you with the proper supporting cast and put you in a position to succeed. Okay? And so now Josh Allen, because they did this the wrong way, A, getting rid of Tyrod Taylor, B, going back to Peterman again. If you felt so strongly about the Peterman, if you felt so strongly about the Peterman to go to him again in week 1, Why you change your mind one game in? Like Sean McDermott's like, this is the right move for the franchise. I don't know if you're the right guy to be telling me what the right move for the franchise is after what you pulled last year. You're lucky you made the playoffs last year because Tyrod Taylor bailed you out after you sold him out by starting the Peterman and him throwing 5 picks against the Chargers. Now, 1 weekend, you had all offseason, all training camp to determine that the best course of action was for you to go with Nathan Peterman to start the season and not Josh Allen. And 1 weekend after you look bad against a defense that makes a lot of people look bad, after you look bad against Baltimore, you pulling the plug and telling me it's the right move? Wasn't it just the right move to start the Peterman?
Yeah, you know what I think happened? He got to go look at them dudes in the locker room. Like but I think this is important, particularly when it comes to quarterback versus any similar situation in sports. You can go out here and you can overtly tank in basketball.
Yeah.
Right? You can go out here and overtly tank in baseball. That's not going to get anybody hurt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't go look at a football team and tell those cats, hey man, we out here playing for the future. Right. Everybody's playing for right now. You asking dudes to play with injuries. You're asking
their jobs
people
on the line.
Yeah, you're asking a whole roster to act like tomorrow is never going to come.
Yeah.
And now you got to go look at LaShawn McCoy, or you got to go look at Jerry Hughes or any of these other cats, and you got to explain to them how it is. I'm working as hard as I can, and you're going to send me out here with this dude. And that's what I think happened. Like, I think when they benched E.J. Manuel in Buffalo, ultimately when they did it, it wasn't simply he was playing bad. He was throwing dudes into injury. And they were just like, oh, okay, hey, man, we can't live like this.
Or just putting bad film out there for it. Like, a lot of these guys, they're not only thinking about trying to win now, they're like, look, you're affecting my value.
Yes.
Long term. But okay, so if you're telling me that he got to look in the locker room, my point is if Sean McDermott's got to look in the locker room and tell these guys that I'm putting us in the best position to win. If Josh Allen is better than Peterman now, he was better than Peterman a week ago.
But that's the thing. He's not better than Peterman now.
So let's talk about the guy making the decisions then.
Exactly. They just can't throw Peterman out there. The decision I think that was bad was you should have kept McCarron.
Right.
Like at the very least, McCarron wouldn't have embarrassed you.
Yes.
And what I don't understand, and you tell me what you think of this, because this is where I think Buffalo loses me here. What was, and I think you kind of intimated this, what was your evaluation of the Peterman at every step?
Right.
From the draft to after what happened last year to what was going on in training camp, all of these things. How was your evaluation of him so bad? Because you were basically making the argument, well, he's not going to embarrass us.
Right.
And then he did.
Like, this is now twice when you have said that there's something about this guy that you feel like he's going to run your offense or execute the system in such a way that Tyrod Taylor, who at this point has got a pretty good body of work to him, and your 7th overall pick, the future of your franchise, was not. So you're telling us there's something that the Peterman has that these dudes do not have. Okay? And my thing is, I guess, look, man, all I can figure out is that he must be fire in meetings. Right. He must be impressive. He must get on a chalkboard and break it down like a coach. He must be at practice lighting these cats on fire. I don't know what it is, because I saw everything I needed to see about the Peterman against the Chargers last year.
Yep. But you know
that's all I need to see.
But you know what part of it is?
He ain't ready.
Part of it is with him is he's one of these dudes who goes through the reads. If it's there in the reads, he might be able to handle it. If it's not there in the reads, he's got nothing.
Right.
And coaches love those dudes, right?
That's going to do it the way they want it done.
Yeah, well, have you read the book The Blind Side?
I have not, no.
Okay, Lewis makes an interesting point there. He talks about Bill Walsh and the West Coast offense and Montana and all of this. And one of the things that Joe Montana resented about Bill Walsh was Walsh did not look at Montana as a great quarterback. Walsh looked at Montana as a great vessel for his genius to do what the offense says, right? Like the West Coast offense has no audibles and all of that stuff. And so a lot of these coaches are looking at these cats and they're like, yo, this is someone that will help me achieve my genius. Just do what my offense says. My offense has all the answers. And so I wonder if that's what happens in Buffalo is they look at him as, oh, okay, this guy has all the answers for my offense. The problem is the other dude, that's not what he is at all.
Yeah.
Josh Allen looks the part, man.
Yeah.
What you got after that? Yeah, I'm asking you for real. What you got after that?
I got nothing. I honestly have nothing other than he looks like they say a quarterback is supposed to look like. But going back to, Peterman's ability to execute the system and him being, the guy that would express their genius, what makes them look like idiots, though, is like, this ain't the way. We all know this ain't the way they want to do it. Because if that's the way they want to do it, they'd have started him day one. They wanted to, like much like Cleveland is doing, they want to take their time and introduce Josh Allen when he was ready. He's no more ready this week than he was last week. And so this is how guys' careers get ruined. And I hope I'm wrong about him. I hope in 2-3 weeks we're talking about him in a way where, okay, they should have started him from day one. Best case scenario. But this is why the idea of a system quarterback, to me, just like game manager, needs to become something that we realize ain't as bad as it used to sound. Game manager used to be, this slur when it came to quarterbacks. No, first and foremost, you're supposed to be a game manager before anything else. I'll be a system quarterback any day of the week because very few dudes, I'm talking about 2 or 3 at the most, 2 or 3. And I'm not even talking about in active quarterbacks. I'm talking about ever transcended their supporting cast.
Yeah.
And just made anybody that you put around them better. I'm not just talking about offensively, offensive line, receivers. I'm talking about defense, coaching staff, their circumstances. Because you've seen so many dudes, Terry, whether it's Jim Plunkett. Jim Plunkett goes on to win Super Bowls when early in his career he was trash. You know why? Because the supporting cast was trash. Because the Patriots drafted him. Right. Not these Patriots. The old Patriots.
Right.
They drafted him and they were awful. So many quarterbacks are simply just at the mercy of being drafted into the wrong situation. And I feel like Josh Allen's about to be the next guy. They're just, and maybe he could have never played. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Maybe, but we'll never really know if you're mismanaging him like nobody's business.
I just want to know this. What system work for a dude that can't throw a screen pass?
No.
Right. Like
Touché.
that's the thing about it, man. That dude could throw the ball through a wall. Unfortunately, that is not, they don't got no walls on the field.
Touché.
Right?
Touché.
Like that's that. And I feel bad, both the Peterman and Josh Allen. I feel bad at times in the way I talk about them because they really doing the best they can. It's not their fault somebody told them the best they could was NFL caliber. right? What they supposed to be like, nah, man, I ain't got it like that.
They faked it till they made it.
They did. They totally did. And so, hey, man, we are going to see Buffalo, by the way, playing the Chargers, as we said again this week.
Maybe that's what it really came down to. Well, like, you know what? Do not put him out there and you see those uniforms.
Yes.
He might start throwing it to them again. Could have been that.
That is why I think more than anything else that Nathan Peterman is not out there. Because they're like, no, we done seen this. That's PTSD, baby. You can't even have that. All right, we'll be back in a minute to talk about Matt Patricia. But first, football season is finally underway, and if you play fantasy football, the odds are probably you already hate your team and you wish you could draft again. Not me, I'm winning. Anyway, on FanDuel, you draft a new team every week. Plus, FanDuel has never been more fun or easy to play. If you're not a fantasy expert, then FanDuel is clearly the place to play. FanDuel has something for everyone, and there are more ways to win than ever before. FanDuel has a new tool called Guru to help you pick your lineups, so you can make smarter picks and feel more confident going into game day. They've made it easy to find your friends and challenge them to play head-to-head contests for cash or bragging rights. I'm looking forward to it, and new users get a $20 bonus when they make their first deposit on FanDuel. Come play with me at FanDuel.com/Bomani. You covered the New England Patriots, so you know a bit about Bill Belichick world and all of those things. Another of his disciples has gotten a head coaching job, even though, that doesn't typically work out that well, but it's happened. Matt Patricia got the job with Detroit. Mike, it's been a week, 1 week, and these dudes seem like they done.
Yeah. I think a lot of this, though, to be honest with you, and I'm not saying this in any way to sound like some kind of homer because I'm not from Boston. And, my wife is from Boston and my kids, were born there, but I'm not from Boston. I'm not a Patriots fan by any means. I started my career there many moons ago, but I think this is where the Patriot resentment comes in, not just externally, but maybe even internally. And by that, I mean, it's like, even though we all should know that just because you coached at the feet of Bill Belichick or you were an assistant of Bill Belichick, that doesn't make you Bill Belichick. And not to mention you're not bringing Tom Brady with you. I think there's this, okay, so Mr. Smarty Artie, Mr. Smarty Pants, Mr. But can you kick my, let's see what you got. And so when Matt Patricia, when his team looks unprepared, when his team looks out-coached, out-executed, and you're supposed to come from this system that's infallible, I think there's this rush to all of a sudden say, see, here goes another one. Here's another Josh McDaniels. Here's another Eric Mangini. Here's another guy. Here's another Charlie Weiss. Here's another guy who really just was a product of his circumstances and not necessarily an extension of Bill Belichick. And I don't believe that that's going to be the case with Matt Patricia. Now, full disclosure, Bo, I'm biased because Matt Patricia and I, we've crossed paths several times. I've gotten to know him over the years as best as anybody can get to know a New England Patriots employee.
Right.
Okay. So I think very highly of him. I got a lot of respect for him. My question is, first of all, we're talking about Detroit. We're not exactly talking about an organization that's been up at any point to where they have a standard of excellence that precedes him. Now, Jim Caldwell had 3 winning seasons in 4 years and went 9-7 back-to-back years. I think what you're seeing here is a couple of things. You got a culture there, sorry to use that word, but you got a culture there that when guys are complaining that you work too hard, or that you got too many rules in place, well, to me, that tells you all you need to know. Because I don't think he's implementing any rules or any procedures or any policies that weren't in existence at the gold standard of NFL organizations, the New England Patriots. So I'm guessing that the way he's doing things is probably the right way, no disrespect to Jim Caldwell, and the way that they're used to doing things wasn't good enough to get over this Lions hump. Last thing I'll say is it's the opposite Joe syndrome. Like Jim Caldwell, and I'm not saying Jim Caldwell was not a disciplined coach. Jim Caldwell did a very good job and is a very respected coach and commanded respect in his own way. Matt Patricia is going to come in and do things differently. And especially if you weren't necessarily losing under Jim Caldwell. 9-7 wasn't great, but it wasn't 2-14. So it wasn't an obvious move that Bob Quinn needed to make. So you weren't losing under Jim Caldwell. The players responded to Jim Caldwell. They liked Jim Caldwell. And now you bring in this other guy with his rules and his policies and his hard practices. Yeah, and he's coming from New England where everybody thinks they know everything. It's just a recipe for articles such as Matt Patricia's in over his head after 1 week.
Now, I don't know if he's in over his head, right?
Yeah.
I can't say that. I will say this, though. He gives me all the vibes of arrogant clown. Number one.
I know what you're about to say because I watched High Noon yesterday.
Show some pride about yourself, man. You've been around football, and I think you'll understand my point because I don't think I said this on television. You can kick it one way as the defensive coordinator. That's not the same way that you can kick it as the head coach.
Interesting.
Right? The defensive coordinator is not exactly your buddy, but it's a different kind of vibe. Like the defensive coordinator is the one more likely to be in the huddles and chest bumping you and stuff like that. Like think of college as an example. Will Muschamp played a whole lot better as a defensive coordinator than he did as a head coach.
Yep.
Like you have to comport yourself differently. Belichick was able to pull all this stuff off in the way that he did because Belichick is like a next level genius at this.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that Matt Patricia can pull these things off. And so I see a dude that's like, it doesn't matter what I look like. It does matter what you look like in that job. That is a front-facing job. Like me and you, we don't dress on the street like we do on TV. Right? Because that's not like, but this is a front-facing job. Once you're there, you do need to comport yourself in that certain way. Now that I don't think is the biggest deal in the world, to be fair.
No, but that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, though. I just think, but it looks like you think you bigger than the position. Like I talk to people from time to time who do TV work and I try to explain to them like, look, man, you out here like I don't take myself too seriously because of how I dress. I'm like, no, you look like you take yourself too seriously because you're ignoring what the protocol is on like how you get down when you're in this position. Like that's like the first thing that I see on him. The other thing, and I just touched on it there, just because Bill Belichick can do it doesn't mean that you could do it. So take a guy like Nick Saban, for example, who we all know is a very good coach.
Yep.
He's a Belichick guy, right? We can't forget that. He is a Belichick guy.
Yeah.
It ain't work in the league kicking it like that, right? Bill Belichick did it this way means that Bill Belichick can do it this way. I don't know too much about how Patricia like relates to his players or any of that stuff, but any of those players are welcome to go on the internet and go to Football Outsiders and look up DVOA and realize this dude ain't got no receipts to indicate that he's so good. All he's got to indicate that he's so good is that he worked for the Patriots. Mm-hmm. And if you think that by osmosis you'll pick up how to win, you picked up how Bill Belichick can win. That doesn't mean that you can do it this way. And that's what he's going to have to figure out.
No, that's right on. And I think that, like, if you're going to draw parallels between some of the predecessors in terms of, Belichick's assistants that went on to be head coaches. So let's take Romeo Crennel. Romeo Crennel is a Parcells guy.
Yes.
And Romeo Crennel had rings as a defensive coordinator, had rings, as an assistant with the Giants and the Patriots, and had a long career. Okay, that's Romeo. Then you had Eric Mangini, who I think there are more similarities to Patricia with Mangini than Crennel in terms of like on the younger side, strictly a Patriot guy, kind of came up through Belichick's ranks and then moved on to be a head coach. Charlie Weiss, also a Parcells guy. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, it's a little different. Because on the offensive side of the ball, now you're talking about the Brady factor, even though, of course, Brady affects the defense as well. But you're more specifically talking about, okay, you guys lucked up and got with the 199th pick, the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yes.
And so whether it's Weiss or McDaniels, it's like, well, you're not working with Tom Brady anymore. So there's that. But I will say this, and now this is the opposite of what I was talking about with the quarterbacks, because I would challenge anybody to go back and find an all-time great quarterback that wasn't at least connected to a above-average coach, if not an all-time great coach. Now, who made who is always up for debate. You mentioned Montana and Bill Walsh, for example. Belichick, his first year in New England, 5-11. 5-11 his first year in New England, and they were out on him. As a locker room, they were out on him. As a fan base, they were out on him. As a media, they were out on him. They were until and look, they were out on him when they were 0-2 to start the 2001 season.
Yeah.
Mo Lewis needs to be right next to Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame. Now Belichick probably would have benched Bledsoe at some point because he was never high on Bledsoe. He would have probably benched Bledsoe anyway at some point that year. I don't think that's any kind of secret. I think people pretty much know that by now. But if not for Tom Brady and what he became, who knows what Belichick is, because Belichick didn't have the receipts in Cleveland. Now, again, Belichick's game plan from Super Bowl 25 was in the Hall of Fame. He to your point, he had done it as a defensive coordinator on the highest of levels. But as a head coach, there were all kinds of questions about how he related to players, about whether his rules were too rigid, whether he was going too hard, until he got his quarterback. I like Matthew Stafford. It doesn't help when your quarterback throwing 5 picks.
No, it doesn't. It does not. Now, let me ask this, though, because I think that everything you're saying there's a basis to it, right? And also people forget, people were out on Belichick. What was it, the next year when he cut Lawyer Malloy? After they lost the first game like a zillion to nothing?
31-0 in Buffalo.
Right.
To Bledsoe and Lawyer Malloy. They were 0-2 that year. They lost to Buffalo and Philadelphia.
Yeah.
To start that season. They were 0-2, and then they won every game after that.
But what also happened was Belichick constructed a defense in 2001 that really carried that team through those 3 Super Bowl wins, right? Like, they had, Willie McGinnis was already there, and by the way, guys that he had coached, Teddy Bruschi, because he had been there
in 96.
In that previous stint. Yep. So there was a defense there that was able to carry it, because that offense was not impressive and did not have a level of talent. You know, that
Ron Borges just said that Tom Brady was great at throwing sideways.
Yeah.
That was 2001.
Yeah, I thought it was the craziest thing in the world when they decided to try to march down the field at the end of that Super Bowl, because I was like, yo, this dude's, and granted, J.R. Redmond was the running back, I think, on that. There's a whole lot of crazy stuff that happened. But
like Sean McVay out here with your memory.
I watched that game with somebody who went to high school with J.R. Redmond. And so right? I'll never be able to, I was in L.A., right?
It was Falk, J.R. Redmond, and here's the other one, Antoine Smith.
That's right. By the way, let me give you a great factoid on Kevin Falk. In 1995, the number 1 recruit in high school was Randy Moss. The number 2 was Kevin Falk.
I believe it. I wouldn't have known it was number 2. But Kevin Falk in high school and even at LSU.
Oh, that's right. You local.
Please.
You local. I forgot. Please. You know this.
Kevin Falk, K-Feezy?
Slidell's own, right?
Shoot, man.
Is he from Slidell?
I'm not exactly sure.
But he in the neighborhood.
That feel a little too close to New Orleans, and Slidell don't exactly. I don't think so. I think he's more from the country.
My favorite thing, by the way, about you New Orleans folks is y'all don't know nothing outside of New Orleans. Yeah, Slidell is next door. Y'all don't know a word about it. Look, I live in the East.
Slidell is literally next door to me, and I'm
always from Lafayette. Even Lafayette.
That's right.
There we go.
And I'm ashamed that I didn't remember that. But check this out though. Thing about New Orleans is like you have a lot of people. And I give Ryan Clark grief for this because Ryan Clark.
He's from Marrero.
Well, that's across the river.
Uh-huh.
No, it's not. Is it Ryan Clark? Somebody else that was saying they were from New Orleans and then they said Destrehan. It might not be Ryan Clark. They said Destrehan. Like, hold on, dog. You can't be saying you're from New Orleans, you're from Destrehan. They got plenty of places in Louisiana, and I hope it's not just me, that I ain't never heard of. And that's my home state. And I ain't never heard of it because, like, you're right. It's New Orleans and that's it.
And my response to you would be like, at least you've heard of Destrehan because y'all ain't heard of nothing that is outside of New Orleans. But with that, with Belichick, I'm saying everything you say is correct. And what you tell me is Matt Patricia better figure out how to build a Super Bowl winner in a year and a half. Because otherwise it ain't gonna work.
Well, yeah. Well, and not just that. I mean, the GM, Bob Quinn, another guy came from New England. Same situation. You know, like Bob Quinn ain't gonna get too many do-overs to fire a coach that was winning and then hire your guy because that wasn't good enough, and then the bottom falls out. You know, it doesn't usually work that way where you can fire a moderately successful coach and still get a chance to do it again. So, no, I don't know if they have to build a Super Bowl champion in 2 years, but they got to show some real progress and quickly. He's also got to turn over the roster some too. Because let's face it, there's a lot of guys, again, that's used to doing it a certain way, and they thought that way was sufficient. I would lean more toward the guy trying to do it the Patriot way. But again, the Patriot way starts with 12.
Yeah. And again, I just want to know what has Matt Patricia shown us, because we don't know that much about him. You know, like you said, you know as much as you can know about a Patriot employee. Yeah. All of the rest of us know is that he worked for Bill Belichick, and that has been demonstrated to not be enough of a correlating factor to make you think that success is on the way.
I wouldn't put it past you to have talked to some Lions players, but if you haven't, I think you're articulating what they're saying among one another.
Yeah, I'm curious.
The moment he was probably hired, they probably said that.
Yeah.
And now that the results aren't there immediately and they're complaining about being tired and too many rules, they're saying the exact same thing. Who is this dude?
Yeah. I'll just say this last thing, because one of my buddies pointed this out, and I'm going to carry it on. My buddy Nick Wright at Fox. He carries this out, so I don't want to act like it's my own idea, but it's a great point. How am I supposed to see you with that pencil behind your ear, but your play sheet is laminated, and I'm not supposed to think you a fraud? Like, how am I not? How is that not the same thing as wearing glasses to make people think you smart? What you got? You got anything?
I told you I'm biased, number one.
I know.
I'm just saying. I like the guy.
I'm just saying, next time you see the homie.
It's a strong point when the car is laminated. I mean, you got to stay on brand, I guess.
Yeah,
but all seriousness, though, you really, I am thinking now, I meant to say this earlier, I wonder if he has to go, look, not everybody gets it and gets everything as a rookie head coach. Hell, you're a rookie just like a player's a rookie. Ain't no different. You're a rookie.
Yep.
There might come a time where he may literally look in the mirror and say, you know what? I may have to, switch this up a little bit.
Head coach got to turn his cap forward.
I got to turn my cap forward if I wear a cap at all.
Yep.
I might have to shave. Maybe I lose the pencil with the laminated play card. That might be something. And I don't mean to compare this, and this is not quite the same thing, obviously, but it reminds me a little bit of another former Patriots assistant, Charlie Weiss. He had to lose some weight. Now, again, that's different. That's more appearance. It's more cosmetic, but he thought he had to lose weight to make himself more appealing as a front-facing, face of the franchise head coach. Yep. So he ended up having gastric bypass surgery, and I believe, I'm not mistaken, almost dying from it.
He did.
There is something to be said for sometimes you just got to play the game.
Yeah, and also with him, by the way, the arrogance of the Patriot way was Charlie Weiss, right? And like that, that he carried that on him. I know what I'm doing because I work with these other guys.
Yeah, I made Tom Brady, yeah.
Yeah, and that didn't so much work. Last thing I'll say on that, this may be one place where having a 90-something-year-old woman owning your team might be good, because if there's anybody that'll come tell you, baby, you need to go trim that beard.
Yeah.
And, look like you got some pride in yourself.
Yeah. And look, I feel you on the receipts part, but I'd still put money on him succeeding. And again, I've already expressed my bias when it comes to him, but just what I know about him, I know his work ethic and what I know about his approach. Now, look, that might not yield results, but I am going to bet on him being successful when it's all said and done.
All I know is this. People going to come to appreciate Jim Caldwell a little bit more, because this is going to be the second time that some team decided to get rid of him because they thought they could do better, and it was demonstrated that they did not. Indianapolis did not do better with the guy that they replaced him with. In fact, they went out and drafted a young quarterback and got rid of a guy that you bring in to work with quarterbacks, a guy that Peyton Manning gives all kinds of credit to for his development.
Never got the credit he deserved, even though Peyton tried to give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, the man started the season 14-0 where they would have gone 16-0 except for the fact that they decided they didn't want to win those games. And, by the way, that team was not loaded.
Yeah.
Right? But, we're going to see. All right, Mike, we got one more here we want to talk about before we go here. Do you know Jesse Washington of the Undefeated?
I don't.
Okay.
I think I've met him once or twice, but I don't really know him. I feel like we've crossed paths, but I don't really know him.
I met Jesse in person once. I met him actually about a month ago, maybe. He was playing ball over here in New York, over at Goat Park on 97th in Amsterdam. My buddy Will Strickland, he's doing this thing Full Court 21, and Jesse came to play in it. Jesse, by the way, also told me that he was at NABJ. I'm going to tell this story because you'll appreciate all the details along the way and know what was going to happen. So he said that somebody came up to him and started talking. They were talking to him about, yeah, man, I met you last year. And he said he rolled out with the conversation. He didn't remember meeting the person. He kept going. And he was like, well, look, man, I remember last year you didn't have no business cards, but this year you got you got a business card? And he's like, yeah, man, I got my business card this year. And he gave him the business card, and the dude looked down and said, who is Jesse Washington? You want to guess who that dude thought he was?
Not you.
Yep.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Because, I don't carry business cards.
No,
and so
I know that. But wait a second. Wait a second. I've seen Jesse Washington.
Yes. I will say this, though, in regards to that. In person, Jesse Washington looked a lot more like me than I had thought.
All right.
But we are definitely in different weight classes. Like, I am the skinniest person in the world. Jesse Washington is not.
How tall is Jesse?
Not far from my height.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so like he's like it was reasonable in that regard. Okay. But I say that to say Antonio Brown said he gonna come up on Jesse Washington's jaw, and I'm not sure that's one he can win.
No, he tweeted it.
Yeah, he tweeted that. That's correct.
No, he tweeted it.
That's correct.
That's two different things.
That's correct.
Because when you tweet it, you ain't necessarily got to follow through with it. So, and he knew that. Like, Antonio Brown, he wrote a check. His mouth wrote a check that he didn't have to cash.
Yes.
Because, you really going to do that? Nobody's really expecting you to do it, and you tweeted it. You ain't say it in his face where you actually had to back it up.
Yeah, but I'm looking at that like, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, that's one thing about that internet that people need to be careful about is there is someone who doesn't find this funny.
Right.
Right? No matter what it is.
Somebody will meet you in Temecula.
Yeah, like, let me tell you a story. I didn't even threaten this dude once, but some dude once let me borrow $3. And he was like older than me, but he kept hassling me over these $3.
Wait, why 3, Bo? I mean, I'm sorry. This is how my mind works.
Yeah.
Why you needed $3? Why not 5?
Because he's making a run to Wendy's, and I think he caught my Wendy's for me.
Oh, okay.
And I probably got like
it's like a $2.99 combo.
I got like two orders of nuggets and fries because we had drinks at the crib, right?
All right, okay.
And so I got tired of him hassling me about them $3.
Yeah.
So I went and got him $3 worth of pennies and left him in his room. He didn't find that funny. He didn't find that funny.
I wouldn't have
all.
found that funny either.
Yeah, well, guess what? I didn't find funny. Grown man hassling me about $3. $3. Anyway, I say that to say, just because you think it's funny,
right,
doesn't mean the other person thinks it's funny. And if they don't think it's funny, there's a good chance they're going to let you know they don't think it's funny.
Yeah.
And in that case, it was immediately clear to me that I needed to be like, all right, I was tripping.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Wasn't no time for pride in that. Yeah. Antonio Brown might not look at it that way, but man, you can't be out here talking about you're going to go up in people's jaws.
Far be it from me. Let's start with this. I respect Jesse Washington's work. Okay. And far be it from me to tell somebody how they should or shouldn't approach a profile of a player who was uncooperative when it came to granting an interview. Okay, which we all know, and I'm not accusing Jesse of this in any way, shape, or form, but we all know that you can't, nobody, especially the readers or viewers, as the case may be, they don't care if somebody said no to an interview. You can't take that frustration out, in the article or in the feature. Yeah. You can't use it as a vendetta, as a way to get back at them for declining an interview request. And I'm not saying that had anything to do with it. I'm just saying Jesse went there. Like, he basically aired a lot of things that if you are Antonio Brown and you are the person that Jesse is characterizing you as, basically Jesse said Antonio Brown's fake, that he's a fraud, that he puts on this this mask of I'm a happy and I'm a God-fearing and God-loving person and I'm the nicest, sweetest guy in the world. Like, that's his facade that he puts on. He's acting out his life on stages with 10,000 people watching or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but he's like, he got 5 baby mamas. I'm just, throwing numbers. He got 5 baby mamas and he's dogging out one of them, and his trainer, he fired his trainer, and his trainer got beef with him, and he's just not the guy that he purports himself to be. So if you're Antonio Brown, that article definitely would rub you the wrong way. Like, he went there. Like, he was DMing with, his baby mama. He was DMing with his ex. He was, he got the trainer's, take on it. He really approached the article in a very personal way. And I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. It was just in such a way that if you are Antonio Brown, whether you should have tweeted it or not, you're saying to yourself, I'm going to punch this dude in the face when I see him.
You got to say it to yourself, though.
Yeah. No, but the article really was so personal. It was, and I don't mean personal like it was a personal attack. I mean, it talked about his personal life, like his relationship with his kids, whether he's, on time with child support, all of this, like he's dating an Instagram model. Like, it just was really about things that if you are Antonio Brown and you're so protective of your brand to a point, and you're so focused on your image to a point where you will Facebook Live in the locker room, that would rub that kind of guy the wrong way. Maybe it was just a case of hit dogs hollering too.
Well, I'm looking at it now. By the way, am I reading this right? Antonio Brown got a child named Autonomy?
You could do a whole podcast on the names.
Yeah. No, like the other ones are like all the other names I'm looking at is like, okay, it's one thing to have a name that is uncommon. I have never thought of naming anybody Autonomy. Like that is.
I didn't know that was in a choice. I didn't know that was an option.
I
thought that was strictly a noun. Like
right,
that's it.
Right. Like, yo, Autonomy.
Yeah.
Good, great. Like, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I am looking at this and I am definitely seeing why I would perhaps not enjoy this article.
Yeah.
If it was about me.
Exactly. If it's about you, you wouldn't find that funny.
No.
He bought $3 worth of pennies in his room.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, he did. You're correct. This is, I do think though, it seems like what Jesse's going for here also is the way that it looks like he was looking for a macro level look at the way the Instagram is used. Right. Like so my feeling on social media is now what has happened is we started off in a place where like regular people were on social media just kicking it. Yep. And then the brands tried to get on social media to try to figure out how to kick it like regular people. And now the regular people are on social media trying to figure out how to kick it like brands. Right. Like I think that, and so if you look at it in the context of branding and the superficiality that comes with branding, then Instagram is interesting in the way that you can put visuals and pictures along with this to allow people to put forth the portrait of themselves that they want out there. And then, so I'm guessing here, Washington is approaching it as, okay, this is what you put out here on Instagram. I want to talk to the real you.
Right.
You don't want to give me none of that.
Right.
So
and here's what the real you.
Right. So here's, even if it's not the real you, it's like, here's what's not on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right. And so he goes from there. But we can't be out here. I'm just saying, as a general rule, man, we just can't be out here physically threatening people because you never know who's going to be like, cool, we can do that.
Yeah, and that's the secondary level. If you are an all-pro wide receiver, like you just can't do that in your position. Like you can't do that in your position, Bo, or my position. We can't do that.
Right.
You Antonio Brown, you can't tweet somebody like, look what your jaw gonna look like. Like, come on, man. That's number one. But number two, you're absolutely right. Somebody gonna take you up on your offer. And Jesse Washington might not be the one that you want to be, putting that out to. But that said, did you see his so-called apology today? You see his statement?
I did not.
Oh man, Antonio Brown. First of all, I don't know now. Maybe I missed it. I don't think he tweeted at Jesse Washington, but he released a statement to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and it was the most PR crafted. Like it just struck me as the type of thing that like somebody in PR wrote me like, "Yo, Antonio, we're releasing this." He's like, "I don't care." Mm-hmm. Like it couldn't have come from him because it just didn't seem sincere at all. So he's compounded it with a lame apology. And look, people are rarely, if ever, there's going to take the side of the media. They're never going to have sympathy about it when it comes to us. Right. When it comes to an athlete threatening us, we always, well, what'd you do? Right. you deserved it. Like it was a bad article. That's what they're going to say. But ultimately, like if Antonio Brown is everything that Jesse says he is, that this guy who's just putting on, then this is the last thing you want to read. I'm in no way justifying his reaction. I'm just saying I could see why Antonio Brown would flip like that because it's almost like he doesn't want anybody to know this part of him. Yeah. I also think that in our business, we really take it for granted, the idea that we just be out here digging all up in people's business. Mm-hmm. And I think if that was my business, I wouldn't want it out there either. Yeah. I think that's an underrated thing about this. Like you're allowed to do this and there's a business that is built around it. But, and I think I'd be kind of curious your take about this now that I think about it, because the job that we do, right? Like I feel like you and I both went from a place where we're the people that are talking about other folks, and it doesn't happen often, what I'm about to bring up, but then somebody wants to come talk to you. Right? Like the interview, you are now the interview subject. And you go the subject of controversy. Right, right. And you go sit for the interview. Yeah. And now there's weeks or months or whatever before whatever, the article comes back out. Right. And somebody might hit you and be like, yeah, I heard from such and such about this or whatever it is. But you do realize you are at the mercy of whoever this other person is and what they decide that they want to find out. And that's not comfortable. No. Like it is, and these guys do it all the time. And I don't think that we give them nearly enough credit for the fact that they are always there. And if somebody just decides they want to go find something out and they work hard enough to get it, boom. Right. You out there. Yeah. No, that is a lot. It's a lot to handle. I mean, look, and you and I have achieved a level of, I hesitate to use the word celebrity because that just feels that feels like an overstatement. Let's just say notoriety,
yes,
or
visibility is the way I like to put it.
Visibility, yeah. To where we get some of that, but that's a fraction of what these cats get.
Right.
And then also the question beyond what you're saying is, like how to deal with that is what's our business? Like where's the line?
Right.
What is our business, or what is anybody's business? Is it anybody's business, how he treats his girlfriend or his baby mama or what have you? Do Steelers fans care about that, or do they care, or does his fantasy football owners care about that, or do they just care about if he's going to put up 152 touchdowns this week?
Well, there's a line.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, here's what I'd say, that there is a space in between what is legal and what is in line with societal protocol.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because what is being done is obviously legal, and our businesses operate on the basis of what is legal, right?
Yeah.
You get the best story that you can.
Yeah.
And let me tell you who long ago gave up on caring about how this feels or whether we should do it. Your editor or your editor's boss.
Yeah, right.
They don't have time to care about that. You come back with the goods, right? Like that's, the writer. And look, there are a lot of writers who are sociopaths. Don't get me wrong. But this is the business that we've chosen, and this is what it turns out to be. So if you are a writer and they say go do a piece on Antonio Brown, and Antonio Brown doesn't come sit down with you about that piece, you got to figure out what the piece is that you're going to do. Now, you make whatever decision that you want about what that piece is, but that's the end of it for the writer and what it is that they have to think about. And then from there, our job is overwhelmingly to do things that we would not want people to do to us.
Absolutely.
At least I personally try to find as best as I can the space where I think this is the way that I feel it would be appropriate to treat me, and then go from there. And then you get to the space where I think it would be appropriate to treat me this way, but damn, I really wouldn't like it.
Yeah, no, when I first got into the business, and I got into it before the internet, like not the existence of the internet, but before it became what it is right now. So there was certain just unwritten rules. And some of those unwritten rules, like as a brief aside, some of those unwritten rules may have contributed to a lot of the misbehaving that people have gotten away with for a long time. But that said, there were boundaries, there were lines, before the day and age that we live in now, where everybody is more or less a reporter.
Yes.
So, but even then, I try to operate the way you just described, which is like, you know what? That's somebody's child. That person has a family. Like, treat them how I want to be treated. I was more so of that mindset within the last, I'd say 5-6 years, man, because it's like when you've been through, when you've had your name dragged through the mud, or when you've been through some controversy, or when you've been the center, of that investigation, or when you've been the subject of these blogs and these articles, and you're watching people do random YouTube video, like, damn, they did a 30-minute video about me, and about my career. Like, wait a minute, it is incredible, and again, that's a fraction of what an Antonio Brown or what some of these superstar athletes and celebrities have to deal with. So 100%, man, it's like, that's why I say I'm not here to criticize Jesse's approach. It was an interesting approach. And maybe there is something to be said for fans actually knowing for whom they are cheering. There might be something to be said for that too. So it was an interesting approach. It was his approach. I respect his work. And I'm certainly not here to justify threatening somebody over Twitter for the reasons you laid out. One, it's just not a good look. Two, he might take you up on it. It might not be a good look for your job.
Yeah, you don't know who none of these people are. By the way,
but I understand why one would feel some kind of way about having your business put in the street like that.
Yeah, I understand that. That we agree there, but also I'll never forget something my homeboy's daddy said. Well, I fight when you can squeeze. Some people, like different people have different approaches when it comes to the adjudication of conflict.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I'll tell you what though too, man. You know what I learned a long time ago is do not ever judge a book by its cover when it comes to a fight.
No.
It's even that soccer cat. Clowning that little dude from Mexico.
You never know.
Man, that dude might have folded you up.
You never know. I'll tell you this. You think, put it this way, you from New Orleans, you think you know Aaron Neville off these records.
You see what I'm saying?
Aaron Neville.
Don't let that falsetto fool you.
Yeah, tell it like it is, huh? Oh, okay. I see you. I'll take another level of that. Wow, this has gone into levels of interest that I didn't realize it would. Thank you for making me actually read this before I talked about it.
But read it again, though.
Oh, I will.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's something that's going to jump out to you.
Oh, yeah. But the levels of this also is Jesse doesn't cover that team every day. Right? Like that's not what his job is not to cover that team every day. It is a little bit of a different ball game when you got to like see people, right? Because
100%.
I think that's a huge change in this industry. And I know like for me, in terms of my approach, I feel like I need to be very careful for that reason, because I don't have to see people. And when you don't have to see people, and I'm not saying this is what happened with Jesse, but to your statement overall about the game, when you don't have to see people, you can get really, really comfortable. Like I made a transition from doing like local radio to doing satellite radio to doing ESPN. And the biggest difference between what I would do on satellite radio or local versus ESPN is these cats see it when I say it now. Before it was like I was talking to my homies. If you do a radio show in Seattle and you're talking about Antonio Brown, then you could say basically whatever wild stuff that you want over there. Right. Because it's never going to come up.
But even if it does, you still don't have to see him.
Right. You don't. Right. Exactly. But like over there, it's like you just talking to your partners. Then you reach a different point and you got to realize, hey man, these cats are going to see this.
Well, but see, this is, I relate in respect to what you're saying because we both live by the same code. We both raised by the same code.
Yeah.
It really come down to this. Like, I'm not going to be no chump, and I'm using chump just to be clean. I'm not going to be the type of cat that's going to say something from the comfort of the studio that I wouldn't say in this dude's face.
Yeah, and you got to be careful.
I'm just not going to be that dude because you, Bomani, you don't respect that dude. You don't respect it because we are basically, if we was to sit up here and talk about somebody in such a way that we would not feel comfortable saying in their presence, then we're no different than the guy with an egg avatar talking trash to us on Twitter. Like when that was always the rule when I was coming up in newspapers. And that's the main reason why the industry has evolved the way it is because back when I was coming up in newspapers, you could not write a column or you could not write or whatever you wrote, even if you weren't assigned the next day, you had to show up in the locker room and just stand there and be available. That's how them old school cats taught me when I was coming up. It's like you can't write an article. And there were some guys that did this. Some very high profile sports writers throughout America who have made a living never leaving the press box. And some talk radio guys who've never seen the inside of a locker room. Some bloggers who have never covered anything. But nowadays it's acceptable just to have an opinion. Your credibility was rooted in how much time you spent inside that locker room, around that team. And you could not get away. Back in my day, I sound like an old dude. Now get up. I'm yelling at clouds right now. Back in my day, you could not get away with writing something and not showing up the next day to, if necessary, be confronted. And so you're absolutely right. When you don't cover the team on a day-to-day basis, not only do you not, and it's got a couple of levels to it from that standpoint. Not only can you, and I'm not saying this is what Jesse was doing. I know you weren't either. Not only can you get away with saying certain things that they might not even come to the player's attention. Not only can you get away with saying things that the player may not actually be able to personally confront you over, but you also don't have to concern yourself with access beyond that article. So if there's fallout from that article, the people that have to deal with Antonio Brown feeling some kind of way are the local guys that cover him every day when he decides, oh, you know what? I'm just not talking to the media right now. Or less than I already do. You don't necessarily have to depend on Antonio Brown for access. So it really we used to deal with that with TV people all the time. A person would do something for the local newscast that would just swoop in on a Wednesday, piss off the player or drive the player away asking their questions and make the job harder for the day-to-day beat guys. So absolutely, man. I mean, the internet and just the ability to write what you want without access to the player, or to the situation or to the locker room, or it's made it real messy for a lot of people.
But I'll admit, you talk about not wanting to be that dude, because I don't want to be that dude.
That's exactly right.
But from time to time, it's easy to be that dude. right? Like, no matter how resistant you can be, like, to an extent, right? Because my thing is...
The key word is easy.
Yeah.
It actually is.
Oh, yeah, because my thing is, look, I got a lot of jokes, right? So I got jokes that I think are fair to say about somebody that I ain't necessarily saying when they're around, because you don't just be necessary, you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right. Like, there's going to be things that, just out of politeness, but if somebody were to ask you to say them again, you would say them.
No, and I've done that too. Look, part of our job is entertainment, as best we could call ourselves entertainers. And absolutely, you're going to get those jokes off. Yeah. But I think rooted in that joke, though, and knowing you, and I think I'm built the same way, you've been thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
You've researched it. And most important, you're fair.
Yeah.
You're not hitting below the belt, or you're not taking it to a place, that's personal or that you couldn't take. Yeah. It's fair.
Yep.
So I think that's okay.
Yeah. No, definitely so. But I think, God, this wound up being so much deeper of a thing than I thought. Because really, again, you can't just be out here threatening people. No. But that story does actually, and check it out, it's on the Undefeated.
You hit it with the Chris Rock, but I understand.
But the Undefeated, check this story out, because I do think that beyond the Antonio Brown part, it does get us to some very interesting levels of discussion on a lot of other things. And look, I still ain't have a chance to finish it. I just got down to the part where he hit up the baby mamas.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of people will find it fascinating, not just in terms of how Antonio Brown represents himself, but I think you hit on it earlier, like Instagram in general. Like nobody posts a sad picture on Instagram. Nobody posts themselves struggling. Nobody posts a broke picture on Instagram.
Hashtag living my best life.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, everybody living their best life. Like, what is the best life at this point if everybody's living it, on Instagram? And so it's fascinating in terms of like, hey, who are you really rooting for? Because again, I go back to how I started it. You asked me about being a fan. I go back to my 10-year-old son. I'm buying my son jerseys. My son is asking me about these players. My son is, I get that now. I never really got that before he got to this age where, the dad card, a lot of dads would play that. Like, what do I tell my kid? What do I say to my son? Like, you're not I kind of get that now. I really do. Like, I mean, it's not on the players to raise your child. Don't get me wrong. But there is that comes into it for a father when you have to communicate to your son why this player was arrested or why this player, got into trouble or suspended or what have you. It becomes an important conversation that you have to have. And especially when they want to support that player. It's like, are you comfortable with your son supporting that player? Because your son isn't necessarily able to distinguish the way we are, which is like that person is there for our entertainment, not necessarily there, to be our role model or our savior or what have you. That person is a player. He's imperfect, just like the rest of us. Separate the two. A lot of times you do have to tell your kid about, who the real Antonio Brown is. So I don't know. It's interesting. And this doesn't make him a bad person.
No.
None of the stuff that was in this article is something that you're like, oh my God, he's the worst person in the world. He's just, got some stuff he's dealing with like everybody else.
Hey, man, that is my man, Michael Smith. Check him out. He's going to be on Highly Questionable down in Miami next week for the whole week. Check my man out. I'll be hitting you the second you get there to find out what hotel you in, all that good stuff like that. I should have hit you for recommendations. I'm gonna tell you where I'm at. It ain't too late. It ain't too late. You can always fix it. I could change it, but I'm gonna need feedback, man, because this is my first time doing the show. Hey, man, just enjoy yourself. As long as you let Poppy do his thing. Yeah, as long as you have a good time while you're there, everything else goes. Because that's the only thing Dan care about. Dan ain't here for no larger purpose than to enjoy himself. I think I met Dan once. I'm looking forward to talking to him. Oh yeah, no. You will have a good time. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do this a couple days a week. Thanks to my man Michael Smith for joining us as a guest. Thanks to FanDuel, our sponsor, and of course, thanks to my man Gabe Bassane. He handles everything behind the scenes. Remember, subscribe to us. You can catch us on the ESPN app. Check us out at Apple Podcasts, all kinds of other places. And, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm gonna think you a hater. Talk to you next week.
Thanks for checking out The Right Time with Bomani Jones podcast.
You can listen or subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Right Time
with Bomani Jones.